Meet Jesse, the creator who turned tea into one of the biggest culture bridges between China and the world. But before Jesse's Teahouse, he did something very few foreigners ever managed to do. He mastered the art of Chinese comedy, and he built a massive following in China. In this episode of China Unpacked, we sit down with Jesse to unpack how he became a viral sensation in China, then lost everything he built almost overnight, to ultimately reinvent himself by turning his love for tea into a global brand. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of China Unpacked.
How you doing? How's everybody doing?
Yes, sir. And today we're going to be unpacking the world of Chinese comedy and teas.
Yeah.
With the one and only Jesse.
Appell, hello everybody. It's great to see everybody. I'm Jesse. 中文名字艾杰西. And I actually just got back from China 3 days ago, so I'm literally have not unpacked.
There's a lot to unpack here. So let's just go back to the beginning of time.
Sure.
Not the beginning of time, but
beginning
like
of time, the Big Bang.
There's the beginning of you, and then there's the beginning of your Chinese existence.
Yeah, I love that. The beginning of my Chinese existence.
Your Chinese identity.
It sounds like a joke, but it's not. No, it's so basically I'm originally from the Boston area. I grew up there. We didn't have anybody in my family that was involved in China or Chinese or anything. And I started learning the language in school. I thought it was fun. I went and studied abroad in China at my junior year of college. And that was really the moment where everything started taking off. I was doing learning 100 new characters a day, every day for 6 months in these really intensive study abroad programs. And we had to sign a contract saying that we would speak no English outside of calling our parents and, just basically have like full on as much like Chinese environment as you could. Some people took that more seriously than others, but I generally did. I mean, I only cheated a couple times over 6 months. So I basically really like crammed learning the language, and then that was the study abroad ended, and I realized I'd learned all this language, but unless I go back and use it, like I basically just sat in a classroom and didn't do anything. And so especially at the time, that was like 2011, 2012, China was still very much more, it was more open than now. Everything was really kind of open and growing. And there was a lot of, good momentum going. And I just realized I wanted to find a way to live in China after graduating.
So what initially motivated you to learn Chinese?
I think I was just always curious. I mean, I like languages. I think languages are cool. It always seemed like it would be really cool to speak another language and live in another country. It's almost like you're, nowadays you don't want to throw the word spy around, but almost like sort of like,
undercover.
Yeah. Like you have like hidden talents, there's something cool about or how much the money's worth in another country and you have like other countries' money in your wallet. That's cool.
Taking advantage of the exchange rate.
I always thought that it would be interesting to just live abroad and came down to where to do that. I mean, I learned some Spanish, I learned some Chinese, but of the two of those, it always seemed more interesting for me to go to China than to Spain or something like that. So when it came time to study abroad, I realized why don't I go to China and study abroad and learn the language? And it was important to me. I'm like, if I study abroad in my life, I want to learn a language. I want to come back from it and the rest of my life be able to say, I can at least speak a little bit of this second language. And, but I didn't expect I would enjoy living there as much as I did. And it was just really fun to be in Beijing and live in Beijing. And there's a lot of interesting, really cool people there from all over the world. And also a lot of interesting Chinese people from all over China that concentrate in Beijing. And so I was like, I want to go back and live here afterwards. And it was, it's not easy to do that because especially as a recent graduate, they have a rule in order to get a work visa, you need 3 years work experience. So if you've recently graduated, in theory, you cannot work in China. But that's exactly the time people want to move to China is right after they graduate. They don't want to get a life settled 3 years and then go. Yeah. So one of the things that I decided to do was to apply for the Fulbright Fellowship, which is it's a cooperation between the U.S. Department of State and then also the Chinese Ministry of Education. And American scholars go to China to study. Chinese scholars go to America to study. It's an academic exchange program. And I went over there to study xiangsheng. So that was how I actually got my start in China, was researching xiangsheng by apprenticing to Master Ding. Just as a xiangsheng researcher, what I did was just perform comedy. Xiangsheng, if people are listening, they don't know, it's a traditional Chinese comedy style. It's there's a joker and a straight man, and they go up on stage and they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. If you've ever been in a cab in Beijing, you've definitely heard xiangsheng. They usually have it on the New Year's Gala, although that's not actually the funniest xiangsheng, because it's actually the least funny xiangsheng because it's on the New Year's Gala. I basically spent my first year in China apprenticing to Master Ding and learning how to do this traditional performing style. And by the time the grant money ran out, I was just having a lot of fun. I was like, I want to see if I can keep doing this.
So you picked xiangsheng as what you're gonna study.
Yeah, so
to get this Fulbright scholarship. How did you pick that? Like,
so I did comedy all throughout high school and college, and even in middle school, I was funny performer. I did improv comedy for many years. I did a little bit of stand up. I wrote for like a comedy newspaper at a college. I was the editor of the comedy newspaper, and so I always did comedy stuff. And then when I was in Beijing, I was missing comedy. And so I was like, what's the comedy like in Beijing? And I discovered, one, there was a bilingual improv comedy group who many of the people there are still like my best friends to this day, the people from my bilingual improv group. And then I also learned there was the traditional Chinese comedy, which was the xiangsheng. And one of the professors at my university 25 years ago had been one of the very first Americans to study xiangsheng and perform. And Master Ding, his teacher, was still alive. And so he was like, Master Ding, every Saturday he has this happy classroom, kind of like semi-open, semi-closed rehearsal. And if you know us, if you can get into the WeChat group, whatever, I'll introduce you to the people. I'll tell you when and where it is. And so I showed up on my last day in China before entering my senior year. During that summer, I was in China on an internship. And so I had like one more day left. My flight was on Sunday. The xiangsheng rehearsal was on Saturday, and I met with this professor on Friday. And on Friday, he introduced me. On Saturday, I went to this class, and I realized, like, wow, I want to be in this room. It was all these Chinese comedians, a couple non-Chinese people that were learning Chinese comedy. They all had the best Chinese of any non-Chinese people I had ever seen, because they do comedy. And the Chinese people were super nice, and it was this very interesting, like, fully Chinese language cultural comedy environment. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I just want to be in this room. And so I at the time, though, I was very worried because I didn't know Master Ding, and I only had one day. I needed him to write me letters of support and all this sort of stuff that I would need for the application for Fulbright. And it's like, you don't just go up to a master and the first day, like, hi, I don't know you, you don't know me, I haven't done any work yet, will you write letters to support me, And so I was like, this isn't gonna work. And so I asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, I'll write you letters. I'm like, really? Oh, great. Great. Like, I'll let you know what it is. I don't even I was like so happy that it was gonna happen. And so I wound up later learning Master Ding's just that type of guy. He's in it to share the culture. Very open. And I think his thinking is like, hey, I'll write a letter and you got to show up. And then if you show up, you got to keep showing up. You got to keep showing up. So I wound up applying, and I wound up winning the grant. And I believe I was the first person to ever win the grant to do performing arts in China, to actually like do the performing art, not just study the performing art. And so but to me, that made a lot of sense, because I'm like, why would I go and like study comedy and not get on stage? Like, I want to get on stage. And so that led to the beginning of a career in Chinese comedy, which I've continued up even until now. That's gone a lot of changes and morphing, and went from doing the traditional comedy to stand up to improv to running a comedy club for 6 years in China to being on Chinese TV shows. To now coming back here and doing bilingual and Chinese shows in LA and around America, and then like making internet content about Chinese comedy, but also tea. So it's kind of been a long and winding road with a lot of changes, but I guess it shows you how much you can do if you never have to work a day job. You get a lot done if nobody is taking up the rest of your time.
Yeah, you get to develop all your interests, and even your hidden talent in
Yeah,
Chinese
exactly,
comedy. Maybe
exactly.
maybe you guys should try it. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I always encourage people to try any sort of comedy, but especially comedy in a second language is really, really good if you want to get to know a culture and speak a language very well. Because like the thing about language is your language only ever gets good enough to do the hardest thing you ask it to do. If all you ask your second language to do is just like order food, you'll be able to do it. If you want it to like write reports, you'll get good enough to do that. If you're like, I want to like go up on stage and make people laugh and like be in a comedy writing room and like pitch jokes and be able to hit the joke the first time, then your language gets good enough to do that. So, you know, 慢慢来.
How long did it take you to get good at xiangsheng initially?
I still feel like I'm not as good as I want to be. It's hard. I think by the end of my first year of studying xiangsheng, I had one like, I think I had I had like a 5-minute routine I could do, and I had a 15-minute routine I could do. But just being able to do it doesn't mean it's like good. So like, you know, I'm performing, you know, I've been doing xiangsheng really on and off for 15 years. And I performed like, you know, a couple of weeks ago in Shandong province. And I'm like, I still got to get way better. I got to get way better. It's really hard. It's scripted. So, but it has room for improvisation. And then even though it's scripted, there's a lot that's not in the script. Like if you read a xiangsheng script, you really don't know how to perform it. You have to see other people performing the bit. You have to hear how other people did the bit. And then because xiangsheng, there's not the same tradition of like in the West, you even get close to stealing a joke and people say you stole the joke. In xiangsheng, a lot of these are pieces that are traditional and have been passed down 100 years. And everybody, in many cases, even the audience, knows the jokes that are coming, or they've seen somebody do something like it. So the challenge is in kind of like bringing your own energy to that, and where do you make the changes and how do you make the changes? Because if you just did everything the same way the masters did, well, you're not as good as them. It's just going to be bad. So you've got to change it somewhere. And so the audience is actually looking at where you're making the small changes as opposed to like, what is the general routine about? Whereas in stand-up, it's more like, who is this person? What are they talking about? What is their identity? In xiangsheng, a lot, it's more like, okay, what piece do they pick? What angle are they taking on it? How are they doing this that's different than everybody else that's doing xiangsheng around this bit? And then for me, there's an added level of being an American. Okay, well, how do you do this bit when there's one of the people are American?
Yeah, that opens up a lot of new possibilities.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then even sometimes like the time you do it in unintentionally winds up changing the bit. Like, you know, the bit that we did is 20-minute routine about singing the Three Kingdoms, 唱三国, and like the bit is like I come back from America and I'm like, oh, 我刚回中国了，我刚在美国创办了一个京剧艺术团. Like I just created a Beijing opera troupe in America. And my partner's like, in America, what do you sing about? Oh, we do Three Kingdoms opera. Three Kingdoms, great. And so it turns out that, you know, we get confused. You're like, let's sing Three Kingdoms together. And then we're like, yeah, let's do it. But we get mixed up because I'm singing about, he's singing about the Three Kingdoms of Wei, Shu, and Wu, and I'm singing about the Three Kingdoms of America, Mexico, and Canada. So the thing that makes it difficult to perform is that like you need to know everything about your character and then the character your partner is playing and how they interact with each other. And then there's always this comic element of like, are you pulling it off? Because if you're not pulling it off, no one's going to laugh at it. Because the material itself, it's not like stand-up where, you know, you're often, you can do like current topics, but it's not as direct as the Western stand-up in terms of getting at current topics. So you're really relying on the performance technique and the dialogue and the go-between and the pacing and the character work and the physicality. You're relying on a lot of stuff to make the bit work because the content is oftentimes like older or it's like traditional or it's like not like super dirty or anything like that. Although it can get dirty. Yeah. Our bits aren't that dirty. Yeah.
So a lot of times, is it the chemistry between you and the other person that's very important as well?
Yeah, right? It's all chemistry because it's like, and it makes it kind of sad because sometimes like if you have a pair of xiangsheng performers and they either have a fight and don't perform with each other or like one of them dies, Like the other performer really can't perform anymore because you've built up this chemistry over many, many, many years. Like when my master passed away, up until now, I haven't done a lot of xiangsheng because my master's gone. So it's gonna take energy and practice and time with a second person to be able to do this. And that was actually my concern about doing this is the partner that I worked with on these shows in Shandong the last couple in last month. Like I had known this guy. He's a disciple of one of Master Ding's Chinese disciples. So technically, I'm his uncle in the Beifen, like the family tree. But he's a great traditional performer around my age. But I was like, I've never done this bit with somebody around my age because usually I'm doing it with my master and he's like 60 or 70 or whatever. And so that is going to change the vibe. And then also, I've just never performed with this guy. I've seen him in our rehearsals. I know him, but I haven't performed with him. So I had 12 days in Beijing during my trip back before the show. And I probably went over at his place to rehearse. I think we did 4 rehearsals in 12 days because we really needed that. We had to get some sort of chemistry together. And I hadn't performed this routine since before COVID. So there's just not a lot of chances to perform xiangsheng in America anymore. So,
are you the straight guy or are you the funny guy?
I played the funny guy, but you learn both. You got to learn both, and it's kind of they say funny man and straight man. It's really kind of like the joke setter and the joke hitter. So like the straight man is not always very serious, although they can be, and then the crazy man isn't always crazy, But generally speaking, the funny man will be like a little bit wackoer and kind of say some wild stuff, and then the straight man's like, whoa, slow down. What are you saying? Oh, I'm just saying, and then they'll go off on these rants together, and it's a lot of fun. I like performing it. And it's also performed in tea houses, which is fun for me now as a tea guy as well.
So you went to China back in the early 2010s. What was the biggest culture shock when you first went there?
Oh, I mean, biggest culture shocks. There were a lot of them. First of all, just like the amount of people. Like there's just like, it's a joke. There's a lot of Chinese people. Like you think there's a lot and then you show up and there's more than you thought there were. Like there's just a lot of Chinese people. Like I had never been on a bus that had been that packed or like a subway that had been that packed or like, going out at like rush hour on a Friday night to try to meet friends for dinner and you get just like smushed in the subway and it's just like so many people. That being said, I actually liked it. I mean, it's one of the reasons why even now in California, like moving to downtown, like being among the buildings and the people, I kind of like that energy. I grew up in the suburbs. So I think it was very kind of cool to me to be in the very dense urban area. And then Beijing is also doubly cool because the area that I lived in for most of the time that I was there in the Second Ring Road, around the north of the Second Ring Road, is the old town. It's actually not that built up. It's like the skyscrapers are all in other parts of the city. So you have this city which is 20 million people, but if you live right in the middle of it, which is the most convenient place, you have traditional architecture and it's much more like a small town vibe, but then you have just completely surrounded by the big city. So it was really cool. Other culture shock, just there were not that many foreigners. So like, being a minority for the first time, I think is really the big one. Just like, people like not sure if they can talk to you. Like even now, like every time I go and interact with somebody, there's always that moment of like, does he speak Chinese? Does he not? Like, people will not just assume I speak Chinese. And so, having your everyday interactions with people kind of be colored by the way you look and the way that people perceive you, I think is a very, now coming back to America, I have the opposite problem, which is that I kind of fit in here in many ways, that I don't have, I kind of fit in many ways that I don't feel like I fit in. And ironically, maybe another reason why I'm more comfortable downtown was just not a lot of white people. I'm not comfortable around too many white people anymore. I've gotten too used to being like the other person in the room. And I think that, I don't know what that means about me, but that definitely is a culture shock and a reverse culture shock and, levels of it going back and forth and back and forth. So.
Yeah, that's kind of true about me as well because I'm basically the opposite problem as you. Yeah. It's like I'm kind of used to being a minority in America, but whenever I'm in China, I'm like, holy cow!
Yeah.
I'm like,
What's it like? I mean, what does it feel like to go back and just kind of like blend in?
it's like what you said before. It's like you feel like you're undercover. Like
Yeah.
like you look Chinese, but like there's something like different about you that people don't know.
Yeah. They're not going to know unless I open my mouth or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, unless they ask me a very serious question about something. So
Well, that's kind of the thing. I mean, even back here, like it's one of the things that's been a challenge for my American comedy is that like my mindset and the way I look at things, I'm coming at it from a different angle than a lot of people. And so even sometimes when I find myself with the same opinion that other people have around me, I have it for like very different reasons. So like even now there's protests going on downtown and people are worried about like being taken away by immigration. And then they call in they've called in the National Guard and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, on one hand, this is like abjectly terrible compared to China where I was for 6 weeks and it's very safe and you can go out and you can walk at night and there's like absolutely no problem. And the reason there's absolutely no problem is it is not permitted to be a problem. And so in many ways, like even the total breakdown of the social order and everybody protesting, and are they protesters? Are they rioters? Are these army? Are they police? What are they? No one knows. It's a lot of very uncomfortable, frustrating, anxiety inducing stuff. But I still in many ways like it because I'm like, this is better than being locked in your house for 90 days. Like, because they told you there's a problem. Like, at least everybody is expressing themselves. And I'm like, hey, if your family was dragged away, it makes sense to protest even if they didn't have the papers. And if there are protesters in the streets, it makes sense that they would put out security and try to stop. Like everybody's kind of acting in some way that is kind of rational to them if you ignore the other people's viewpoint, which is, not very empathetic, but, this is life. A lot of people just ignore each other. And so I think that even coming to the point of well, maybe I'm supporting the protest, but for a different reason than other people would be. And then it's also doubly confusing because I was and, kind of still am an immigrant in the sense that I've spent almost all of my adult life working in another country and I know the visa problems. Like I know visa problems better than almost any American, people who have had to deal with the visas and the green cards and all this stuff. And how do you do this? Like a lot of Americans have just no idea how the immigration system works. And so they're like, well, why didn't they do it legally? I'm like, dude, the system here, good luck doing it legally. Like give it a try. Like, it's not going to be easy. And so I think that a lot of these layers of thinking just don't show up on the face when I'm in America. And when I'm in China, it's kind of the opposite that if I have an opinion on something, people are likely to believe it's because I'm coming from a different place. And usually that's true. So it actually in many ways makes it easier for me to have unconventional opinions in China because they expect an unconventional opinion coming from a foreigner that's lived in China for many years. But then here, it's not as easy to understand how to express the unconventional opinion because I'm kind of, I don't look like the type of person who you would expect to have an unexpected experience or life experience. So it's
almost like, being there kind of give you it's like a freedom of you can just be whoever you want.
There is definitely a lot of freedom in being in a foreign country in the sense that, and the thing is, I actually think it's really, the freedom is not coming from being in the foreign place. The freedom is from giving yourself the permission to be who you are. But because you're in a foreign place, you're going to get judged for a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense. They're foreigners, you're American, people will make assumptions about what I am, who I am or what I think. And so I kind of enjoy not necessarily fitting their ideas. And in order to not fit their ideas, I need to know, well, what ideas do I have? It's not enough just to say I'm not that. You need to tell people who you are. It feels even more important in a foreign country when people are asking you, who are you? How did you get here? You get a lot of these questions. In LA, nobody ever asked me how I moved to LA. You know, like they just assume you pop up somewhere. Like, you know,
Everybody just move here to chase their dream.
a lot of people move here to chase their dreams. Like they don't think of like, you know, they don't think like, oh, I moved here because my visa was denied, which is the true answer. I was like living in China and I had no plan on leaving. And then COVID hit. I came back to America and COVID hit while I was in midair. So I wasn't leaving China because of COVID. I left China, COVID hit in midair, and I landed to find out that my visa was canceled and I couldn't go back. And so that was 3.5 years of trying to get a visa. Like people are protesting about these immigration things, and I think a lot about how I tried 3.5 years to get a visa, and I had money to be able to pay agents, and I had a business in China that I had set up where legally I should be able to get a visa because I'm the legal representative of my company. And I still couldn't get a visa. It just shows you like this disconnect between the ideas that people who don't actually live between two places, they have concepts about the ways things work, and they're not based in any reality or experience, and yet they're very confident. You know, and in both places, in China as well, a lot of Chinese people would be like, only losers from America move to China to teach English or whatever. I'm like, dude, even if you were like not a crazy success in America, if you're American and you move to Asia and you move all the way across the world and you're like that, you're way out on a limb. This person is very like, they're willing to take risks. They're willing to like, you know, try stuff out. Even if they're not like, you know, whatever Ivy League graduate back home or something like that. It's not every American that has the ability or the mental fortitude to go and live in China. So even a basic English teacher, you know, that person's a pretty interesting, unique person. But Chinese people are just like, oh no, they're all the English teachers are the same, right? They come to make money or whatever. I think that the culture shock is really very high in that sense of it's actually much easier to have the culture shock there than it is to come back here, because people have a concept of culture shock, and very few people in America have the concept of reverse culture shock, to know that you went somewhere so long that you come back and all of this has changed. That's something that I think we might have a little bit more knowledge on, but like regular Americans or even Chinese don't think of it that way. What's your reverse culture shock moments, or what you're working through with your reverse culture shock?
I remember the last time I went back to China, one thing I kind of have to get used to is a lot of places, let's say it's like a milk tea shop or something. If you go there, you try to order something, there's not really like, you can order from anywhere. There's not a screen. There's not a person you can talk to. You just have to order on your phone.
Yeah. They like, in a lot of the train stations and stuff like that now, the restaurants are like that. Like you just like, they expect you to scan a code, go through their mini app on WeChat or whatever, place the order there. Like, you know, it's in many ways, I mean, I struggle to say the word advanced, but it's more advanced in the sense that it's a better, more efficient use of technology. I don't know if it makes, I think it can be isolating, because there's something nice about walking up to a counter and talking to a person and making an order. But then also, if you're in a train station, you're in a rush, it's like, yeah, I don't want to wait. Like, you know, eight people are in line, wait to place my order. I'll put it in now, start making it now. I think that the thing that is a little bit unnerving to me is that compared to, say, in 2012 when I first moved there, you really have to be part of these systems now. Like if they blocked me from using WeChat, I could not live in China. Like it would be basically impossible. Like people would be like, hey, you're a good friend, but you're not that good of a friend that I'm going to download a special app just to talk to you that I'm actually going to check, you know? And so they're like, I'd lose all my contacts. I'd lose all my ability to make payments. Like, you know, there's like, it really is it's kind of like a sword over my neck, especially knowing now the damage that's been going on between the US and China relationship. Like, again, when all these protests, like when the US is bad to visa holders, those countries are bad to our visa holders. You know, after coming back and they're saying, oh, they're going to be taking away Chinese students' visas, and now they're not, and now they are, and now they're not. And I'm like, so like, why should I expect better treatment when I go to China? Why shouldn't I expect them to threaten to take my visa and then not, and then threaten again and then not? It's just like it causes a lot of bad kickbacks down the road, that the people who are doing the bad policies here just like have no intention of ever facing the consequences for their actions abroad. And then if you actually live in both places, though, you wind up eating the shit from the bad policies in the other place that they're being bad to you.
What made you moving back to America and specifically Los Angeles and starting your tea career?
Yeah, well, I mean, the answer to all of those questions is COVID. So I lived in China 9 years. I had no intentions of leaving. I went back home for what I thought would be a 9-day vacation in January of 2020, and then COVID hit in midair, landed, flight was canceled within a couple days, visa was canceled, and then because I was a comedian, like this was such a low priority job to get back into China. Like I basically could not get back in. I tried for a full year making internet content, doing comedy online, trying to do comedy. And it was really funny because I was on a TV show right when COVID hit, and I held like a charity fundraiser raising money for COVID victims in China, and I was making internet content all year. My following exploded, but I could never make any use of it because I couldn't go back to China. And so I eventually had to kind of like, I don't want to say abandon, but I like had to basically give up the fact like in America, if you can get to 2 million like, followers as a comedian, you're set. You just sell live tickets and you tour as much as you want and you make as much money as you want. In China, I couldn't go back and tour because it was COVID. And then by the time it was getting obvious it was going to be a long time to get back to China, also the U.S.-China relation was bad, so it's going to be hard to get my jokes approved there. And so basically, like, I wound up having this big comedy following and no idea about when or if or how I'll ever be able to use it again. It was so difficult in that situation to write comedy, so I would be sitting and I would be drinking tea all day and trying to write jokes. And I found I was just drinking more and more tea and writing fewer and fewer jokes, a pattern that continues to this day. And tea was my hobby when I was in China. I would drink tea every day. It was something that I was interested in. I would hang out at the wholesale tea market in Beijing, and I would try to make jokes and just kind of like hang out with the tea people. And it was just something that I was a hobbyist, but I never thought I would have a career in it. But eventually, after a year of not being able to perform and not being able to figure out how to make money on the internet doing Chinese comedy during the pandemic, I kind of was thinking to myself, like, I had this moment where I realized I got like 400 million hits in China in 2020, and I made no money because they don't pay you for the hits. So I had this moment where I was like, you have to sell something, Jesse. Like you don't have a choice. Like there's like, you can get to having the millions of followers and hundreds of millions of hits and still make nothing, because if you don't sell anything, who's going to pay you? So I was like, okay, so if I have to sell something, why not sell something I actually care about? And the only thing I could think that I actually cared about and had any sort of like, in on was the tea, because I knew a lot of tea farmers and tea shop owners. And so originally I was going to try to sell tea in China with my Chinese following. But it turns out you need like 9 months of paperwork to be able to sell tea online in China. And so while I was getting the papers, I started making English language videos about tea and posting them on the Western media, starting from new accounts, starting from zero. And people, I wouldn't say immediately, but like quickly were like, oh, they're asking a lot of very good tea questions. What's this tea? What's that tea? Why does it matter if the tea's aged? How does the gaiwan work? Like the gaiwan is the lidded cup used to make the tea. And the people are like asking these interesting questions. And I kind of had this realization. I'm like, actually, the people who don't know about Chinese tea are all in the English-speaking world. And so even though I'm not by like Chinese standards, like a tea master, just being able to be a real tea drinker and having drunk tea every day for, hundreds or thousands of days in China made me an expert by American standards. And so I started the Jesse's Teahouse, web channels, and started Jesse's Teahouse, the website, and then started by importing tea and making originally a 4-tea sampler and packing them all by hand. And, we were sold out of them before they even came. And then we had the second shipment. The second shipment sold out before it came. And just sort of, it took a while to get, we just couldn't buy enough in the beginning. And, and that's evolved now into running, a tea company where I have 9 employees. I have, we have 1.2 million followers on the tea channel, which is unbelievable. We have warehouses in the EU and the UK and in Canada. So it's like it's turned into like a global business that is, you know, half the team's in Asia, half the team's here. So the team kind of is never sleeping. And it's really the most bizarre thing that's come out of COVID, but it's been fantastic for my life because now I have income that's not tied to the comedy, which is good because now I can make the comedy that I want to make and not just be like, oh, well, what jokes am I allowed to say right now? And just tour those jokes over and over again to make cash. This is it's a better balance for my life. And of course I love tea, so I get to spend my time drinking tea, going to the tea mountains, you know, motorcycling around the tea mountains. Like, it's pretty nice. It's like a good way to spend time. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Wow. It's like you did it in China with the xiangsheng, and you did it here with the tea.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's like both sides. You have a identity that you can go with.
It's a little bit of a split identity because, you know, some people might know me for one thing. They know me for the comedy. They're like, why aren't you performing as much anymore? I'm like, I would love to, but I'm actually really busy with the tea. And they're like, you run a tea company? Like, they're like, what? And then the tea thing as well. Like, a lot of times I'll be doing tea stuff and then I'll take, you know, days off to go to Shandong province and do comedy. And like, I have to tell my tea company team, like, I'm in comedy mode. Like, you can't contact me. Like, I got shows. I have to rehearse. Like, you know, it's not good for the tea company to step away from that. But at the same time, it's like, I'm going to go crazy if I don't do any comedy. I really like performing. And so like, I think it's, you know, I'm still learning how to merge these two parts of my life. It's getting a little bit easier, but it's definitely, and the best part about it is now I have a good reason to be in China and a good reason to be here. So I feel like before, during COVID, and you asked why I moved to LA, I didn't have anywhere to go. Where would I go? I didn't want to stay at my parents' house, and I wanted to be somewhere that had enough Chinese people that I could perform comedy, and I wanted to be somewhere that had an entertainment scene. And it was either New York or LA, and I was like, well, let's give LA a shot. The weather's good, and if I don't like it, then I can move to New York, or hopefully by the time I figure out I don't like it, I can move back to China. And so this last trip back, I've been really thinking about not moving back to China, but like splitting my time more evenly, maybe half the year there, half the year here, instead of like 2 months a year there, most of the year here. And so that's kind of, I think, my next phase of, you know, unpacking China is actually going back more and just like all the stuff that's going to mean for like how I maintain my relationships with people, friends of mine, how I, you know, even like things like I joined a gym and I like try to stay in better shape in America. And then I go to China and I just eat 火锅, 麻辣香锅, and like 烤鸭, and like all this like huge amounts of food. And I'm like, I can't live like this in China all the time and then come back to America and also eat bad in America. So like, I need to figure out like, how am I just going to like not, you know, just like destroy myself with all the options available, especially now going back to China. I feel so cheap compared to LA. So like, I'm in this mode of trying to figure out how to hold down a life between the two places again.
Yeah, it's like, you try to balance the two places, but at the same time you have a choice, and that's, you know,
the choice feels so much better because that was the other reason it was so hard coming back, was that I didn't choose it. And I know it sounds really stupid, like your body is, you know, like, you know, COVID was not the worst time of like physically, it was not the worst time of my life in the sense that, you know, I didn't get sick. I ate a lot of ice cream and watched baseball and like chilled. And it was very uncomfortable for me because it was like, I didn't want to be doing that. I wanted to be out doing shows and getting back to China and seeing my friends who I never got to say goodbye to. And like to just sit and, you know, even now, like LA is nice, but like I kind of don't want to just sit next to a pool and do nothing. I want to be doing projects. I want to meet people. I want to use my time in America well. And being able to go back to China and choosing to be in America and use that time feels so much better than, oh, you can't go back there, so just do the best you can with what you have. And so now I think I'm really, the challenge is to mentally really accept that it's like, it's better. Like, oh, you can go there. I can go back anytime I want. And I have friends there. And the biggest problem I'm going to have a lot of the time is like how to deal with the suitcases. And I can come back here to America and it's fine. And it's like, I have a car and I can drive around and I don't need to like, you know, I don't need to be dumped on the shore like I was last time here with no idea what I was doing or what I was going to do in America or any income. And now it's like, it's actually better. So I think I actually have a hard time getting out of that struggle mentality because it's tempting to think the struggle mentality is what makes you successful, but it's not true. It's like I think that like the type of person I am, I'm going to hold myself to a high standard anyway. You don't have to struggle. The struggling is optional. The work is not optional, but the struggling is optional, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because you always want to be better. You always,
Yeah.
you don't want to too much peace. You want to,
Yeah.
if you're standing still, then it means you're not really making progress. You're not getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So you're not improving. So
And that was one of the reasons why it's like, and because again, just being like a random white guy living here, like I will be allowed to live very peacefully if I just shut up and do nothing. Like, no one's coming knocking on my door to check my papers, and I'm a citizen. So even if they do, I am a citizen. No one's going to cause me problems if I just kind of sit back and let things be. That makes me really weirdly uncomfortable. Whereas in China, it's like, because I was an immigrant there and because there was always a low level distrust of America or Westerners or whatever, even though most people were very nice, there's also like, you're not part of the team. I think that when I succeed there, I'm more willing to tell myself, like, you really did it. Like, this system was not set up for you to be able to get a paid job as a Chinese comedy writer on a show. Like, you've really done an amazing job to get here. Whereas in America, like, I really have done like a good job with the tea company, but I feel a lot harder giving myself credit for it because it's like, it's just like the system was set up here for me to succeed in a way that it was not in China. And so I don't know. I'm just a very anxious person, I guess you can. I have a lot of anxiety about feeling good.
this just means there'll be bigger things after tea. What's next? What's the? Well, you never know, right? Because you didn't know you're gonna do tea 5 years ago.
I will say though, like originally I was like, selling something felt like selling out, and now I'm like, no, this is the best thing that's ever happened in my art. Like. It's just so much easier. Like, if you sell a silver piece of jewelry, that might be like 2 tickets worth of comedy money, but you can sell it to anybody in the entire world. And so, basically you can be doing shows in the way that I think about it is how do you make money? You sell tickets to shows. You can be doing shows on the internet based around whatever you want to be doing. And then some amount of people go to the website and buy stuff. And it's actually a better model for the artist than like, I want a bunch of hits and hope YouTube will pay me. Because YouTube is not going to pay you. Like if you had enough money to make your money off of YouTube, you could be selling something. And even if you just sell a little bit of it, now you can do your art. And so I think that like, I've seen a lot of potential for, I know e-commerce, it sounds like a very like unartistic thing, but like, I actually think this is the thing that separates the artists who are able to make the work they want to make and the artists that don't is who has enough money to just keep doing it. You don't need to make millions of dollars, but if you just make enough money that you don't need another job, you can actually do the thing you do. And that's kind of the area I found myself in very unexpectedly, and I really like it. So I need to explore in that area, see like what is next. I don't know, maybe jewelry. During the trade war, when it looked like they were going to shut down all trade between U.S. and China, I'm like, should I run a travel company? Should I do tours of Chinese tea villages? And I guarantee you people would buy it. There's a lot of potential that's come out of it. And so I think the challenge has been really focusing and being able to say, like, what do I want? What do I actually want to spend my time pursuing? Because you can't be a jewelry person and a tea guy and a comedian and a travel guy and make videos and do podcasts. Like you can't do it all. So I'm trying to figure out what I really want to be doing.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. That is a very inspirational story and how you're able to navigate both cultures and be successful very quickly.
No, thank you.
So,
thank you for inviting me. I always love hanging out with the multicultural people.
That's the whole point of this podcast.
Exactly.
We want to, bridge the gap between U.S. and China and also the world because we're all the same people at the end of the day.
And I just fucking refuse to live in a Cold War. I don't want to do it. I'm like, let's keep talking because like that's the thing that stops the thing from going cold. Is like if everybody stops traveling, everybody stops talking, all of a sudden we're in a Cold War and this is not fun. So let's not do that.
Yeah, it's like being stuck in your own home and not talk to your neighbors or
Yeah.
seeing your friends.
Exactly.
Okay, we all got to meet each other and make the world a better place.
I agree.
So, as always, this is Victor,
Yep. This is Jesse.
and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye bye.
Peace. 再见.